All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode. Today, we're going to be continuing our series on understanding scrupulosity, and we're going to go into one of the sub themes that a lot of people get stuck on, and it's this idea of does God exist, and or what's going to happen when I pass away or when I transition or die. And I want to be really upfront here and say that in this episode, I'm not going to offer a conclusive idea on these questions or something that is going to be an absolute. The point of this is to really understand that these are questions that people get caught on from the lens and the loop of OCD. And the pursuit of these answers is what paradoxically gets them stuck deeper and deeper and deeper. So, my intention in this episode is to really unpack this a bit. And, I am going to be talking from as broad a concept as I can, and really offering just some insight, and then more importantly, shifting to looking at this and understanding this from an OCD and anxiety perspective. So, to begin, the question, does God exist, or what happens when I die or when I pass away or transition? So, the reason I lump these together is because often when someone is fearfully seeking out as opposed to intuitively like feeling into, and again, it's really about the energy going into the question. When someone is frantically or fearfully trying to understand and know for sure whether or not God exists, is generally because they want an explanation for something else. It's usually not like I just need to know a yes or no. Then they generally want to move into, well, what's going to happen when I die? Does heaven and hell exist, or why does evil exist? Things like that. So the foundational question, right? And really, it's a very important question, I think, for everyone to sit and at least feel into and think about and ponder from time to time in life, and really until you feel like you have a good direction with this question is, does God exist? And then, you can go into your definition of God, what that is, and, how many people have contemplated this and discussed this and argued about this and fought over this and even died over this question throughout the millennia of time. So it's not like the expectation is not that you're going to arrive at this direct answer, but more the pursuit of this question is a lifelong worthy pursuit. Now, that said, when it comes to the context of OCD and anxiety, it becomes counterproductive. It becomes paradoxical that it actually becomes destructive, right? So, and when someone's pursuing this question from a higher state, they're not doing it with a frantic need to get a concrete answer so that they feel okay inside. When someone's exploring this question and pursuing this question from a much higher state, they generally move into it from a feeling intuitive state and really an exploratory state, right? Like, I want to understand, I want to pursue truth, I want to pursue a higher truth. And it really is about, again, being honest, what energy you're moving into this question with. So going from there, when we're talking about scrupulosity, what happens is an individual will be in a fearful state, or they'll have this fear going on, and they project it onto this question, or project it onto God, meaning they falsely convince themselves that the fear they're experiencing is because of the lack of the answer to this question. So then what they do is they pursue the answer to this question with the intention of alleviating their fear and making themselves, quote unquote, feel better. And what happens is that no answer ever suffices, no matter how, because fear always has the next what if thought that it will throw in place. And so no matter how much you read, no matter how much you go to a church or wherever your place of worship is, no matter what you do, right? Prayer, right? All these what appear to be very religious activities or religious pursuit activities, none of it is actually done with the intention of pursuing God. It's done with the intention of alleviating your own fear. And that's why I find, that it becomes very paradoxical for people, and it actually becomes a very destructive force because the answer to the question is completely self-driven, right? And lower self, ego self, right? Fear. It's not, people are in Scrupulosity are not pursuing this question with the intentionality of evolving themselves to, higher levels of consciousness, or even pursuing true understanding. They're wanting an answer to alleviate the uncomfortable emotions that they're experiencing that are merely projected onto this idea. And I know, so if you're listening to this, and let's say you wrestle with Scrupulosity and you find yourself getting defensive right now, step back for a second and just kind of like think about it, right? It's like you really have to be able to consciously look at yourself and be honest with yourself and saying, why am I doing what I'm doing? Right? And so the tricky part is the fear will hide in these moralistic virtue ideas, right? Well, I want to be a good Christian, or, Catholic, or, whatever faith you practice is all, doesn't really matter in the context of this question. But, I want to, you'll convince yourself that these are the reasons, but really the energy field underneath that, the real emotion that drives all of it, is fear. And when fear is the driving force, fear is destructive. And what happens is this ultimately leads to compulsive rumination. It leads to ritualistic behavior, and ultimately takes over a person's life in some cases, where they believe this is about God, but it's not really about God. It's actually about the fear and the attempt to alleviate the fear. So the reason that we talk about scrupulosity and we categorize it in this idea of OCD and anxiety, but the reason it is actually not even categorized, the reason it is an actual OCD and anxiety problem is really because of the dominant energy and the emotion that the person's in the pursuit for, right? Because someone who is naturally pursuing a deeper relationship with God is not, they don't have the compulsive drive that someone that's energized by fear, or someone who's really looking to alleviate fear, does. There's not this right now need that that the person feels. They understand there's a process unfolding, and they're not there's not this compulsive need for an answer, or a compulsive pursuit for an answer. So when you're seeing someone who's dealing with a question, and is locked onto a question, or looping about a question of God, does God exist? I need to know, and asking for reassurance, and spending hours each day, even longer, frantically pursuing this. The thing is to first realize and become conscious to the idea that this is fear that's driving this. And fear, in my belief, is really the opposite energy of something like God, which is unconditional love. And again, even to try to define the idea of God, I can't do that. But, even beginning to try to understand this idea of all-knowing, all-powerful, omnipresent, right? Unconditional love, substance of the universe. It's not something that your mind can grasp. That's what makes you not God, right? Because it's not something that I don't think we're really capable of understanding. But when you're talking about the energy field of love, which is very high, and the energy of fear, which is very low, you're not going to be able to find that answer from this energy of fear. It's very paradoxical. So the pursuit of it, with trying the alleviation of fear, is going to paradoxically get you stuck in this loop on it. And that's what happens with scrupulosity, with this specific idea, or this specific question, is it just becomes this endless loop that the person gets stuck in. So in order to break out of the loop, you have to recontextualize the problem and really understand that this problem has nothing to do with God. And this jump is very difficult, and you're going to hear me say this again and again in this series, because it's so, it's the leap of faith that someone needs to take, is that me pursuing this answer to alleviate my own fear is actually driving me further away from the answer, right? It's a destructive force. And this is why, the hardest thing for people with scrupulosity that I see happen is that they get so caught up in, because the content is associated to God or their faith or their religion, or the content is locked on these topics, that they deny that this could just be a fear and anxiety problem, because they take the content at face value. And this is the jump every single person with fear has to take. So this is why there's no form of OCD or anxiety that's harder to treat than another. Everyone has to take that same leap of faith that this is fear, and what I'm seeing is not actually the issue, whatever that may be, whether it's contamination, driving, flying, intrusive thoughts, or God. And the jump is to actually recontextualize the problem as OCD and anxiety, and actually treat the problem of OCD and anxiety. And once someone can really buy into that idea and really get that concept, then they can have great success with this. And then more importantly, once you get out of the loop and energy of fear and you move into a higher energy state, oftentimes, like I said, these answers become obvious to you, but in that low fear state, it's just going to always produce another what if or another doubting question that will lead you on this endless pursuit. And that's the problem with scrupulosity and this specific question that people get stuck on. So, I wanted to talk about that because I want to talk about specific themes and experiences that people get caught in, because they're very common. And then more importantly, contextualize it as well as I can into what the problem really is, which is this OCD and anxiety fear loop that has these 4 components. And then really understand what we need to do to break the loop. By breaking the loop, you generally move into a higher state. And in the higher state, you're usually able to see things much more clearly. And it's not that, and getting the answer will never get you there, because there is no answer that will ever suffice fear. And that's it's almost, once you pursue this from a completely different perspective, is what allows you to shift to where you can then begin to see this in a way that really makes sense to you. So hope that's helpful. Hope that makes sense. And with that, look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And if you're looking for resources and guidance, again, check out the links in the notes, because we have some great stuff to get you started on that path. So with that, see you guys in the next episode. I hope you have a good week. Hey there. So if you enjoyed that video, we've linked up a few more videos that we think you'd find helpful as well. And if you have found this helpful, we'd really appreciate your support by liking and subscribing. And if you're looking for help and guidance, please check out restoredminds.com, as we have several options for you to get started. See you guys soon.